There are forces of good and forces of evil at work in the world today. What are these forces? Who is responsible for the good? And who is responsible for the evil? Richard Shoff talks about current events which are rarely discussed by the mainstream media, events that affect us all. This program seeks to identify, to inform, and to equip the believer for what's ahead. Welcome to What in the World is Going On?
This is Richard Shoff, your host for the program What in the World is Going On, brought to you by Lincoln Log Homes, Kannapolis, North Carolina. I want to talk briefly about what really is at stake in the raiding of the private attorney of President Trump. Alan Dershowitz is a noted constitutional attorney. He is a Harvard Law professor, well thought of by his colleagues. Happens to be a Democrat, admittedly did not vote for Donald Trump. What does he have to say about this? Well, in one line, he said that the FBI raid was not a good day for democracy. Harvard Law professor Alan Dershowitz blasted special counsel Robert Mueller for passing information to federal prosecutors in New York that sparked a raid of President Donald Trump's lawyer, saying, as I said, not a good day for democracy. Dershowitz said the development appears to be a division of the Mueller probe. Mueller has now acknowledged he doesn't have the authority to look into Trump's pre-presidential activities. So he's filtered it off and given it to the Southern District of New York, which is going to investigate those aspects, he said. But the raid on Trump lawyer Michael Cohen is particularly odorous, a quote from Alan Dershowitz. This will be a great distrust of relationships that are very important to the American society. Confidential relationships between a priest or a preacher and his congregation member, between a doctor and a patient, and a lawyer and a client. Dershowitz compared Mueller as moving in the same case, moving the case to the Southern District to look over other matters regarding the lawyer, his private activity, and negotiated settlements. In other words, he divided the case. Seems like subterfuge by which Mueller doesn't have the authority, so now we're going to get somebody else in on it. He gives them the information. It's like laundering information to another prosecutional authority. Dershowitz rips the special counsel as partisan and a zealot. I think Mueller is a zealot, Dershowitz said on the Cats Roundtable, that's 970 AM radio in New York. I'm quoting, I don't think he cares whether it hurts Democrats or Republicans. He's a partisan and he's a zealot. Dershowitz is a famed defender of civil liberties. He frequently rails against, quote, criminalization of political differences. The Justice Department, the Attorney General, they always have a conflict of interest, he points out. The head of the Justice Department is a cabinet member who's supposed to be loyal to the president, but he's also supposed to be the chief law enforcement officer of the United States. And those roles are completely incompatible. Every other Western democracy divides those roles. Dershowitz said justice has to not only be fair and impartial, it has to seem to be fair and impartial. When you have somebody running for office and her husband is in charge of very important investigation of political candidates, he said, this is a problem. It's a perception of unfairness. And there he was referring to Director McCabe and his wife and what happened there. The American public is losing faith in the objectivity and neutrality of our criminal justice system. And it doesn't make any difference if you're a Democrat or you're a Republican, according to Alan Dershowitz. The Justice Department violated Michael Cohen's constitutional rights just by seizing his records, Dershowitz tells the Daily Mail. The government will set up a team of agents and lawyers to review the material to make sure prosecutors don't see anything privileged. But it could include documents that are covered by the sanctity of the attorney-client relationship whose mere presence in a prosecutor's hands could taint a case. But since those taint teams aren't made up of government agents, Dershowitz says the DOJ already has them, and that in itself is unconstitutional. Dershowitz also claimed that if Trump were a Democrat, the American Civil Liberties Union would be protesting the search of that lawyer's office. Among the scooped up papers and lurking on telephones and hard drives, there's likely to be a bunch of material that's covered by the attorney-client privilege. The taint team that will work on the material doesn't work, according to Alan Dershowitz. He told this to the Daily Mail on last Tuesday. Because seizing the material in the first place was a violation of Cohen, that's the attorney, his constitutional rights, even if it's never used in court. Harvard Law School professor Alan Dershowitz said Tuesday that the Justice Department violated the rights of Donald Trump's lawyer, Michael Cohen, when the FBI seized his files on Monday because of constitutional protections against unreasonable searches and guaranteeing the assistance of legal counsel. He said it's rare for federal law enforcement to serve a no-knock search warrant on an attorney in a case like this, a high-profile case like the one now swirling in the White House. Dershowitz said Monday night on a Fox News Channel interview that it had been a very dangerous day today for lawyers-client relationships. The perception of assembling a taint team, he said, revolves around the Fifth Amendment, which protects Americans from being forced to incriminate themselves. And so when the team shifts through the Cohen documents, hard drives, and memory sticks, it'll be searching for protected material that should be kept private. The Fourth Amendment prohibits unreasonable searches and seizures by the government. That's a description that could apply to scooping up communications between a lawyer and his client, except in extreme circumstances. The Sixth Amendment guarantees Americans the right to assistance of counsel for courtroom defense, meaning no government can interfere with that relationship. Dershowitz told the Daily Mail that if the government improperly seizes private or privileged material, the violation has already occurred, even if the government never uses that material. Ultimately, Dershowitz's beef may be with whatever federal judge greenlighted the DOJ's request for a search warrant covering the places where Cohen lives, works, even a hotel room that he sometimes works out of and holds television interviews from. He compared Monday's document dragnet to government surveillance of a confession heard by a priest, a patient's discussion with her doctor, or a husband and wife talking about their private sex life. The government simply has no right to this material, he said. And remember, folks, this man is a Democrat. He's a constitutional attorney. He is not a Trump supporter and did not vote for Donald Trump by his own admission. Dershowitz said in a Fox News Channel interview that it had been a very dangerous day today for lawyer-client relations. If this were Hillary Clinton having her lawyer's office raided, the ACLU would be on every TV station in America, jumping up and down. The deafening silence of the ACLU and civil libertarians about the intrusion into the lawyer-client confidentiality is really appalling. This all from Alan Dershowitz. What do other people have to say? Well, Jerome Corsi, he says the FBI raid proves deep state is out of control. Jerome Corsi, he's the author of the New York Times bestseller, Killing the Deep State, The Fight to Save Donald Trump, told Newsmax in an exclusive interview that the FBI raids on Donald Trump's longtime attorney, Michael Cohen, is, quote, a disgrace. Corsi likened the FBI tactics to the KGB's method under the Soviet Union and called for the immediate resignation of FBI Special Counsel Robert Mueller. In an exclusive interview, Corsi called on Mueller to resign and said the FBI had lost its independence. The way Mueller handled it was to break in on Cohen like he was a common criminal. He hadn't been convicted of anything. They ripped papers out of his home, out of his office. They came in with a bunch of FBI agents acting like thugs, taking whatever they wanted, not explaining themselves, removing computers and every other thing that they think they might have any use to. This is not the United States of America, Corsi said. If the FBI wants to investigate, why do they have to behave like the KGB or some third world country? He noted it's a disgrace, and Mueller needs to resign simply for abusing the lawyer-client privilege. Corsi continued, I think the American people need to be outraged. They are outraged. I think this is a complete disgrace for us as a nation in terms of our rule of law. Don't you agree, folks? Larry Klayman on the Russian probe. Let's end this agony, he pointed out to Newsweek Mac. The raids on properties linked to President Trump's attorney, Michael Cohen, indicate that it's time for the special counsel to be shut down. This according to Freedom Watch founder Larry Klayman, as told to Newsmax TV. Now it's time for action, he said. Something's going to have to be done. The end is in sight. This is an out-of-control law enforcement system which is being run by the establishment, the Republican establishment, Democrat establishment, and the president needs to take action himself. Both of these establishments want him gone. Why get down and bow to them? Do what needs to be done, Mr. President. The American people will understand. They will back you as they have before. I saw a letter come through from Daniel Sobieski that I really thought kind of summed things up. I want to share it with you, good listeners. Guess whose house wasn't raided by the FBI? If there was any doubt about Robert Mueller's Arab-like goal in the unseating of President Trump at all costs and by any means, it was erased by the thuggish FBI raid he orchestrated on the home and office of Donald Trump's personal attorney, Michael Cohen. Can't find any collusion between Trump and Russia? Hey, why not look for collusion between Cohen and the professional whore and porn star Stormy Daniels? Was she paid to go away with campaign funds? Even so, that's only an FEC violation punishable by a fine and something that does not require a SWAT team. It certainly does not even compare with the money funded by Team Hillary and the DNC through a law firm to Fusion GPS and British foreign agent Christopher Steele to put together a fake dossier on Trump using Russian sources. But where were the raids on the offices of the DNC, on the Hillary Clinton campaign, on Fusion GPS? You didn't hear about any, did you, folks? According to the Daily Caller, Robert Mueller is interested in a $150,000 donation made to a Trump charity in 2015 by a Ukrainian businessman. The donation from steel magnate Victor Pinchuk pales in comparison to contributions he gave to the charity Bill and Hillary Clinton set up. The billionaire has contributed $13 million to the Clinton Foundation since 2006 and had access to Hillary Clinton while she served as Secretary of State. But Special Counsel Robert Mueller is not investigating the Clintons. Instead, he's conducting a broad investigation of Donald Trump, including the flow of foreign money into various Trump-controlled entities. Folks, Mueller is in fact colluding with Comey and the rest of the deep state to enact revenge on President Trump for his victory and Comey's firing, something which even Comey said Trump was constitutionally entitled to do. There's no evidence of collusion with Russia. There's no obstruction of justice. It is not obstruction of justice for a president to exercise his legal and constitutional authority, and he had that when he directed the firing of Comey. Incidentally, Trump didn't fire Comey, Rosenstein did. The fact and the lack of actual crime will not stop Robert Mueller. Just show him the man or woman, and he'll show you the crime. Whether it be Michael Flynn, Paul Manafort, or now Michael Cohen. As with the pre-investigation exoneration of Hillary Clinton by Comey, the facts don't matter. Neither does apparently attorney-client privilege. Sentence first, trial later. These individuals are merely collateral damage in Mueller's vendetta against President Trump. The raids linked to President Donald Trump's attorney into Michael Cohen's house indicate a complete destruction of yours and my rights to privacy when we talk to our pastor, our priest, our attorney. These are constitutional rights, and we're giving them all up while they try to bring down our president. Folks, I'm not in a position to say whether Trump should fire Mueller or fire Rosenstein. Some good arguments all around the case, but it's time for our president to take action. And it's yours and my responsibility, good listeners, to express our views. And if you support our president, it's time that you say so now. God bless until our next meeting.